final comment about the wild beast that Paul fought with. That's 1 Corinthians 15:32. If after the manner of men I have fought with beasts at Ephesus, what advantageth it me if the dead rise not? Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. Now the question is, who are these? What is this wild beast that Paul fought with? And that's caused Bible scholars have argued over this, because some understand it to say it's figurative. It's only figurative language, and it's talking about the opposition, so he's referring to the men as being the wild beast. And and in a way, the Bible does refer in sense of Satan being a wild beast. It says, "Be sober, be vigilant, for your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walk about seeking to be made devour." So yes, there are instances in the Bible where wild beasts can be demonic spirits, and also sometimes men are referred to as wild beasts. Jesus said, beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. So yes, so it can be a reference, but I don't believe that is that's what it's talking about myself. I actually take the position that Paul did literally fight with a beast. The reason why I don't believe it's figuratively is because Paul says he fought with wild beasts at Ephesus. Now, although he had problems that we mentioned at Ephesus, when the people stirred up trouble saying, "Great is Diana," yet Paul went through worse than that at Philippi. When he was beaten and thrown into prison and the Philippian jailer was converted and there was an earthquake, he actually went through worse. So if he was actually talking about fighting with wild beasts, why would he take a place like Ephesus where the persecution didn't lead to him being beaten or whipped, didn't lead to any kind of, it was just the opposition. So I don't believe it. I actually take it literally. Some say that he could not be literal because Luke doesn't mention it in Acts. It's true. Luke doesn't mention Paul fighting with wild beasts. But that does not mean it didn't happen. Luke didn't write everything that Paul did. I mean, for instance, you cannot argue from silence, because if something is silence, it doesn't prove it happened, and it doesn't prove it didn't happen. I mean, the fact is that Luke doesn't mention that Paul bathed. Are we going to assume he didn't? Because he doesn't mention it. And there are other things that Paul mentions himself, yet is not mentioned by Luke. For instance, Galatians 1:15. Galatians 1:17, where Paul says, Galatians 1, "Neither went up I to Jerusalem to them that were apostles before me, but I went to Arabia and returned again unto Damascus, and after 3 years I went to Jerusalem." Now Paul mentions that in Galatians 1, but Luke, in writing the book of Acts about the life of Paul, doesn't mention it. Now, are we to assume that it didn't happen because Luke doesn't mention it? There are several things that Paul says happened that Luke doesn't make no mention of it. You see, if you're writing something about somebody, you don't write every single thing they did. You take highlights of their life. So I believe that it's literal. And it is quite possible that he did actually fight with some wild beasts at Ephesus. Because Asia has a great variety of wild animals. They've got tigers, they've got leopards, they've got crocodiles, they've got poisonous snakes, they've got adders, cobras, vipers, they've got the python. The python of all the snakes, the largest, is found in Asia. So they've got many wild beasts. So it isn't unusual for Paul to fight with. In fact, we do know from one account of Paul that when Paul was preaching on one occasion, a snake bit him. We know that happened, and he shook it off. And nothing happened to him. So it's quite possible that there was a case that Paul did, and I believe that Paul did literally fight with a wild beast. It doesn't mention it. I wouldn't be dogmatic on it because it makes no difference one way or the other, but I just mention it because it relates to Ephesus. And I cannot see it. I cannot see any other way, looking at Luke's account of Ephesus and what Paul went through, that this can be nothing more than a literal wild beast that Paul fought with. So what it was and when it was, we don't know. Paul makes a brief mention of it here, but Luke makes no mention of it in the book of Acts. So I just add that as an interesting extra. So I've had to lay the foundation of that because we are going to look at the book of Ephesus. We're going to go right away through the book of Ephesians, not Ephesus. We're going to go right away through the book of Ephesians, looking at every chapter in the book. But we have to. The reason I've done that is because the book of Ephesians was written to the church of Ephesus. So we need to understand how that church came into existence. We need to understand the people to whom he was writing to and the culture of what took place. That will help us to understand.
Thank you for listening to Evangelist David McKivett. If you need prayer or would like to receive a free copy of our magazine called The Great Commission, write to Full Gospel Evangelism, P.O. Box 24528, London E17 3FG. That is Full Gospel Evangelism, P.O. Box 24528, London E17 3FG. Eternal life is a free gift from God. Jesus died for you at Calvary. He is the way, the truth, the life, the door. If you believe in Him, you shall be saved, 'cause God's free gift to you is eternal life through Jesus Christ the Lord.